It's been a long time since I've played a Ratchet and Clank game. The last one I played was Ratchet and Clank Deadlock, which was probably the worst of all the Ratchet and Clank games, just because it really wasn't a Ratchet and Clank game. Not in its heart, at least. It had a lot of the pieces that you would think of, the weapons, the power-up, the abilities, all of that, but there was really not much of an arc. There wasn't really much of a story. I mean, there really wasn't even much Clank, if I'm remembering it correctly. It lost all of the real stuff that made the game awesome. It was playable, but ultimately forgettable. I think Deadlock honestly killed whatever it was about me that enjoyed Ratchet and Clank. Didn't have anything that I wanted to do with it after then. And maybe that was an unfair thing to decide. I mean, it was one game that was pretty horrible among a whole bunch of other games that were great, that I enjoyed thoroughly. But I have no idea how good the games were after that point. Fast forward a whole bunch of years later, and I have now finally got around to playing the rebooted remake, reimagining, the redo of Ratchet and Clank, far after it actually came out. I'm about 5 years late to the party on this one, but seeing that a brand new Ratchet and Clank is out now in the form of Rifts Apart, I felt like I really needed to, at the very least, give this one that was the most recent beforehand a thorough exploration before getting into the new hotness. It's interesting that I'm now playing a throwback to my earliest Ratchet and Clank memories with a large gap in the actual chronological releases of the games. It's left me looking at it through very different eyes. Years have passed since the last time I had a Ratchet and Clank experience, and now it doesn't feel quite the same. And I'm left wondering if that's because of a difference in quality, a difference in the games, or a difference in me. I recognize all the parts and pieces. I also recognize a lot of nostalgia going on, but that nostalgia is very distant. I don't have any recent memories of Ratchet and Clank. It's been so long since I've played it that those memories are entirely fuzzy and faded. I can tell some of the actual throwback moments. I can see some of the exact same levels and weapons and references and jokes that were there present in the original games. Part of me wonders if I were to go back and play the original Ratchet and Clank, the very first one in particular, but the first three, let's say, if I would then look at this remake with a lot more appreciation because I could see much more clearly where they've stayed faithful and where they've innovated. I'm definitely aware that they've done both with this remake. I know for sure that they have stayed fairly faithful to the source material in a way that I appreciate. And I also know that they've innovated and updated some things in a way that I also appreciate, because I feel like a really effective remake should do both. My first impressions of the 2016 reboot of Ratchet and Clank in terms of the graphics, the environments, the visuals, the presentation, the details, the effects was a very blended thing. I think this is a combination of looking at the game that is actually almost 6 years old at this point and comparing that to current modern graphics, as well as comparing it to graphics back in the very first game in 2002. So I will say that the nature of the graphics, or not even the graphics really, more the art style, the artistic decisions of Ratchet and Clank are very smart because they hold up well and they're generally timeless. The comparison to a Pixar movie has kind of been pervasive with Ratchet and Clank for a very long time, especially since the movie has come out. I don't think that did any favors in it escaping that comparison, but it holds true. Much like a Pixar movie, which doesn't tend to stray too close towards realism, there's a certain timeless quality to it. You can tell that although maybe the technology itself of the animation and the visuals is not terribly advanced, it still holds up to scrutiny. It still looks good. It still reads well. You can look at it and say, hey, this still looks good. It's still pleasing to the eye. It doesn't look like dog shit. And because it's not relying on a realism factor, it doesn't date itself so badly. Exploring some of the worlds that were a direct remake from the original game was definitely a treat. To see the increased detail, all of the extra wildlife, all of the extra plants, all of the extra effects, all of the extra fauna, stuff that we got the framework idea in the original game that has just been expanded on so much was really enjoyable. Even though I haven't played the original game or the original trilogy for many, many years, I could feel the memories dredging up, and I feel certain that there's a lot that was packed in there that was not there originally. I could still be taken back to that earlier point in life where I played those games and had those experiences. So that was a real treat. Gameplay-wise, the Ratchet and Clank reboot certainly holds up. I can definitely tell that they have done a lot of small tweaks and adjustments to bring it into the modern age. There's a little bit of refinement to the gunplay, I think. The way that Ratchet handles in general is just better, smoother, more able to flow and move in the way that you would expect of a more modernized game. It still definitely gave me deep nostalgia for the original games. I could definitely feel the influences there. They kept close enough to it that it was just like playing the old games all over again, even so many years later. But they definitely modernized it. They definitely improved upon it enough to make it a much smoother experience. And I definitely appreciated the fact that both of those things were going on. That yin-yang of old and new, traditional classic gameplay, and something that is a little bit smoother and more able to live up to modern gaming expectations. I recognize almost all of the guns. I believe that there were a couple there that may have either come from other Ratchet and Clank games or been maybe a complete original, but I want to say that most of them were from other games. Unless I'm mistaken, they did do some tweaks to those guns. They were not directly 100% what the gun experience was in the original game. They were tweaked. They were changed just enough to make it feel a little bit different and a little bit more interesting, but still kept the core of what those guns and weapons were. The guns and weapons are an integral part of the Ratchet and Clank experience. I think that anyone who has played the games can recognize that that's one of the core elements that makes the game so fun. These very bombastic, over-the-top, strange guns that some of them are pretty standard, but even those end up getting a tweak here and there to make them stand out. And then some of them are just absolutely off the wall insane, which is the real heart of the fun of the game. The sound effects, music, all of these things were suitable for the game. There were a couple of moments here and there where the music, kicked up into some soundtracks that had a nice little bop to them. I wouldn't say that there was any point where the sound design just absolutely blew me away, just floored me. And that's pretty consistent with what I remember about the original games as well. There's plenty of games that I have played and haven't played for a very long time, and I still listen to the soundtrack of that game. The music still pops up in my head out of nowhere, and then I have to compulsively listen to it because it's just stuck in my brain. That's true of modern games, and that's true of games that I played 10, 15, 20 years ago. I don't think I have any of those experiences with any Ratchet and Clank games. The music is good. There's nothing wrong with it, but it never hits that level of being incredibly memorable and sticking with me as part of the experience. I will say that what stands out much more than the soundtrack or the sound effects is the voice acting. The voice acting is solid. I think that even back in the early days of the game series, the voice acting was solid, particularly when you think about what the state of voice acting for video games was during that time period, which is to say not great. As to the story itself, it is as most Ratchet and Clank stories are. It was simple, it was charming, it was funny, but not uproariously funny. Not like, oh my god, I'm gonna die funny. Plenty of wit, chuckle-worthy moments, endearing characters going through a solid story arc. And it's not anything Shakespearean or on a deep level of something like a Kojima game or a deep, sprawling, epic story. But that's not what it's supposed to be in the first place, so there's no disappointment there. As with a lot of the Ratchet and Clank games, there's a lot of different mini-game elements, a lot of different collectible elements, and a lot of elements to break up the pacing of the game. You still have the grapple hook, you still have the grind boots, you still have the anti-grav boots, although that, I think, of all of the alternative ways of navigating around the levels was the weakest. I can only remember a couple of times when you even used the grav boots. You get a jetpack. That seemed, I think, expanded from what it was originally. I don't recall being able to fly around quite as much with the jetpack. It was limited to certain particular areas, but at least it was more of a feature than it was before. So kudos on a little more of that. They increased their collectibles. Now you have the standard bolts, of course, and you have the gold bolts, which made a return from the original series. And once again, I think it was not used for anything in-game. I think it was still limited to like skins and alternate modes and unlockables and stuff like that, which is fine. At least they have something that they can use for a mess around aspect of the game. I like that kind of stuff. It makes it more interesting and a little more kooky and quirky and fun. They also have a new set of systems. They have the card trading system, which was pretty cool. I actually liked that. You could use that both to unlock various weapons in the challenge mode, which, if I'm going to be honest, I didn't check out. I played through the main campaign of the game all the way through, and that was pretty much it. You can leave a comment if I'm just missing out on the full Ratchet and Clank experience by not doing the challenge mode. Maybe I'll go check it out again. You could unlock that. You could unlock modifiers that get you more bolts, more cards, more of the raritanium crystal. That was also a new feature. You could use the crystals to make actual upgrades to each individual gun. So your gun becomes stronger both through using it to level it up, but you also get to use the raritanium crystals to get the different abilities unlocked. That can be in terms of increasing its power, increasing its fire rate, increasing its ammo count, increasing some special aspect of the specific weapon. And there is also special unlocks within those unlocks that you can get to that will even change the way that the weapon functions, adding new attributes to it and stuff like that. Some of the non-combat gadgets do make a return. The hydro pump comes back, and you can use that to navigate different puzzles in terms of platforming so that you can access different areas depending on if you need water there to get higher up or you need the water to get out of there so that you can continue on. The hacking minigame was also back. That was something that I remember from either the first or second game that I enjoyed quite a bit. The hoverboard racing is back. It was okay. I don't really recall it being great in the original game. I definitely don't think it was fantastic this time. It was functional. It wasn't horrible, but I could have done without it. But at least it was something to give us a little bit of variety. What I did enjoy more was the ship battles. I don't think that was included in the original game. Maybe it was, and it just wasn't executed well enough for me to remember it. But this time around, I thought it was functional. I thought it was fun. It wasn't the best ship combat experience I've ever had in video gaming history, but it was good. It was passable. It broke up the monotony a little bit, and it was good. It was fine. Good job. So now I'm left with my overall. How much did I enjoy the remake? As it turned out, I enjoyed it quite a bit. Not because it was perfect, not because it was a revolution, and I don't know that it was even because it was an absolute faithful recreation of the original. What I will say is that it is modernized enough that it's not bogged down with the type of problems that you get from playing old-time games of that generation, right? However, it still remained faithful enough to the core gameplay experience that even though I couldn't really remember the specifics of the older games because it had been so long, I still was able to have that feeling of, yeah, I've been here. And yeah, that's familiar. And I'm pretty sure I've had that scene before. I've used this gun before. I've fought this enemy before. I'm going to shortly be playing Rift Apart. I'm looking forward to that a lot. From the bits and pieces that I've seen, it seems like it is really done a great job of tapping into the potential of the PlayStation 5. I hope that when I play it, I walk away as happy with the experience as I did with the Ratchet and Clank 2016 remake. I have that reminder of what was so great about those games fresh in my mind. And now I can go into the Rifts Apart and judge that against what came before it. Is it as good? Is it better? I hope so. We'll see soon. Thank you guys for checking this review out. I appreciate it. This is my first game review, or at the very least, the first game review that I've done in a really long while. I'm figuring out how to do this. I don't really know what I'm doing. That probably shows. But I have some high hopes that I'm going to put it together and start improving my quality as I figure out exactly what I'm looking at. If you want to see more coming from me in the future, make sure that you subscribe and turn your notifications on. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks so much.